N'oublions jamais l'Australie. Let us never forget the Australians. The instruction is written above every blackboard in the elementary school in the French town of Villers-Bretonneux. In a campaign using the slogan, "By diggers defended, by Victorians mended," children from the state of Victoria each donated at least 1 penny to rebuild the school, with the Education Department matching their funds. The new school was named École Victoria. Still to this day, the Australian flag is flown alongside the French at Villers-Bretonneux. And there is an impressive monument to the thousands of Australian soldiers whose bodies were never recovered. Nearby, one encounters the Rue de Melbourne, Restaurant Kangaroo, and Pub Le Canberra. Why such devotion to our country in a small French town so far away? Because on this very night, 100 years ago, 2 Australian brigades, on the orders of the Allied Commander-in-Chief, Marshal Foch, and led by the Australian General Harold Pompey Elliott, launched a counter-attack on the German forces that had taken that town the day before. War correspondent Charles Bean wrote that the Australians didn't stand a chance. Thoroughly depressed, feeling certain that this hurried attack would fail hopelessly. There were many parallels that night with the night 3 years before in Anzac Cove. Both required daring in the darkness and the courage to expose troopers to well-armed and entrenched opponents in the dawning light. The difference, however, is that at Villers-Bretonneux, the Australians won the day, though at the cost of 1,200 Aussie lives in one day. One British war correspondent declared it the most outstanding manoeuvre of the war, while a German officer present later recalled that the Australians were magnificent. Nothing seemed to stop them. N'oublions jamais l'Australie mirrors our Australian saying, lest we forget. Taken from the Old Testament book of Deuteronomy, popularised in the Christian poem Recessional by Rudyard Kipling, and later set as a hymn, these 3 words have become a part of the Australian psyche. One of the last remaining uses of the subjunctive mood in English, the word lest, here says more than simply that we celebrate Anzac Day so as not to forget. Lest here stands as a warning, an admonition. We should not, we must not forget. Why the warning? Because, to be frank, we are very good at forgetting. It's a coping mechanism. Too much grief for too long is debilitating for us, and we are easily distracted. Contemporary culture, so little versed in history, so wedded to the latest image or tweet, might be called a culture of distraction. the ordinary human tendency to forget is magnified by modernity. Yet remembering is also fundamental to humans. Ritual commemorations are to be found in every culture. In Judeo-Christian tradition, remembrance suggests more than a ritual calling to mind. It makes present that which is remembered and calls forth a response in the participants. In the Ode of Remembrance, we undertake to remember them at the going down of the sun and in the morning. To remember them, no doubt, in our tears, imaginations and prayers, but surely also in our actions, lives, commonwealth, lest we forget. It's a promise, but also a warning, that if we forget them, we demean their sacrifice, dishonour their ideals, harden our own hearts, and lose sight of what makes us human. As the Book of Wisdom put it in our first reading, these virtuous men's deaths may seem like annihilation, but they are actually at peace. What appears punishment is in fact rewarded with immortality. What looks like a failed test is truly rewarded with gold. And not only are they remembered, the text suggests, they are our judges. To remember them is to invite comparison, assessment, judgment of our generation with theirs, of our ideals, courage, willingness to sacrifice. We remember them, not just as an impersonal force, but as individuals. Recently, friends of mine buried their 96-year-old father and grandfather, Jack Langrell, who served as an able seaman on HMAS Australia in the Battle of the Coral Sea. His father, John, had served in the Royal Australian Navy from 1911 to 1933, including on the first HMAS Australia, and then became a police sergeant at the Naval Dockyard, Garden Island. Jack, his son, in turn served from 1938 to 1955 on the second HMAS Australia, as well as HMAS Albatross, HMAS Hobart, HMAS Canimbla, and HMAS Sydney, the third one. Pop was a man of great faith, warmth, and humour, who could see the good in any person or situation. By flaunting his great age and cleverly wearing a golden Irish beret and smile, he managed to get his photo in the papers every Anzac Day for the last decade. Greatly loved by his wife, 3 children, 9 grandchildren, and fellow servicemen, he had a great influence on many. How many more of our returned service personnel have had such an influence, or would have had they lived? After the war, the people of the still ruined town of Villers-Bretonneux erected a memorial to the Aussies who died there on this day 1 century ago. The mayor declared that the people desired quote, to thank the valorous Australian armies who, with the spontaneous enthusiasm and characteristic dash of their race, in a few hours chased away an enemy 10 times their number. Soldiers of Australia, whose brothers lie here in French soil, be assured that your memory will always be kept alive, and that the burial places of your dead will always be respected and cared for. As we entrust our departed veterans to their loving God, we join our French friends this day in declaring that they will never be forgotten, lest we forget.